Welcome into another episode of Southland Shenanigans. I guess you would call it the iconic trio of David Barry, myself, and Matt Fay. We are back for another episode for you guys. We didn't really have anything planned, kind of an uneventful time for the conference, but the gift that keeps on giving, the SFA Athletics social media accounts, decided to drop us a gem, and here we are. David, why don't you welcome the fans and our special guest, Matt Fay, to the show.
Yeah, man, obviously always great to have Matt, Lamar, beat writer for the Beaumont Enterprise. But, man, like you said, we didn't really have anything planned. But, SFA, that athletic Twitter account, dropped a gem on us yesterday, Wednesday, when they tweeted out something that you always see different, social media accounts put out, like name a more iconic whatever. And SFA decided to say, name a more iconic stadium. And they put their stadium, in the picture, and it caused a stir. I didn't say, I put something pretty benign. All I said was LOL, quit playing. Some other people put a lot more forceful things. It's just, there's a lot going on with it. It's the audacity of it is kind of part of it, because there's a YouTube video. I think I shared it with you guys.
Yeah.
A YouTube video that talks about some of like the worst looking stadiums, like in college football, FBS, FCS, whatever. And they put that one in there. Actually, to be fair, I think Sam Houston State's might also be in there too.
I believe they're in there as well. Yes, absolutely.
But the SFA stadium is in there, and so to just see them put that tweet out is just like, come on, like seriously, nobody honestly thinks like, do you guys even believe that? Honestly, that's the crazy thing to me about it. So it's just, like I said, the audacity of it was the biggest thing to me.
Yeah, Matt, what was your initial thought whenever I texted the name a more iconic stadium, we'll wait tweet to the Southland group text?
Well, my thought is like, I hate to look like we're piling on SFA all the time, but they just keep giving us opportunities to throw shade. Like, we don't enjoy this. Well, maybe we do. I don't know. Maybe I do a little bit. Maybe Josh, you do. David, maybe you do as well. But listen, I mean, when accounts tweet, I'll say dumb things, I think it's our responsibility to go after them a little bit. I don't know. That's how social media works. We didn't invent the internet. We didn't make the rules, but we have to apply by them. So I'm happy to get after it with you guys today, and it should be a good time here.
Yeah, and
Go
sorry,
ahead.
but the thing about it is you mentioned it. When it comes to that stadium, their seats don't even. I think it was the 20. They don't even hit.
They end at the 20-yard line. That was my reply to you.
So that's one thing. And then if you've ever been to the stadium, I've been there a few times. I've been there once to cover a high school game, and then I was there last year when my niece played there. I mean, it's not like it's an okay stadium. It's not incredible. It's not like horrible, but it's definitely not iconic. Like we're going to get into it. I can only call maybe one. Like, if you're going to combine how the stadium looks along with like atmosphere and history and everything, there's only one stadium, I think. We'll get to it, but there's only one stadium in the conference I think is iconic. If
and
you're going to use
located
that.
in Nacogdoches.
No. But yeah, man, it's just, I mean, and then obviously what also contributes to this is the fact that it's SFA. Like, if it were another program,
Right.
Like if it were, if Abilene Christian tweeted this out, maybe, but like, I doubt we're going to all just be looking like, all right, let's go, dunk on them. It's because it's SFA, and, they like to let you know everything. Like, they're going to still talk about that win over Duke.
Yeah, and the thing, I think the perfect quarantine Zoom video, David at the cafe talking to his waiter mid-interview.
Hey, Hey, this is how it goes. It gets real. I told you guys, my Wi-Fi at home not great. I'm not gonna have the company, but the Wi-Fi is not great. So this I'll take that and good Wi-Fi.
Absolutely. But yeah, you mentioned exactly the thing, I wanted to touch on, first before we get to the basketball thing, I just want to read a couple of the better tweets I saw responding to this. Patrick Netherton really got the party going, NSU guy does the radio up there and has an amazing radio show up in North Louisiana. And he said it perfectly, literally any high school stadium in Texas. McNeese, just hit him with a couple emojis and a picture of what we would call a potentially iconic stadium, the only one in the Southland that has that potential. My buddy Michael Connor does radio down in Houston. All of them ? And then probably the one that takes the cake is Brandon Ogden. I'm trying to remember which publication he's with. Works at a paper up in Tyler, but he just kind of came in with the haymaker and goes, surprise, the picture is actually from an SFA game. One year, the cover of the media guide was a photo of a Lufkin purple versus Longview green playoff game that was packed even on the grass, and they tried to disguise it as an SFA game versus Southeastern Louisiana.
That's perfect. That was the perfect one because it was like everything else is just like making fun, but he came in and he was serious. Like he came in like
he's been in East Texas. He came in with the facts.
He had receipts.
He had the receipts.
He came with the receipts.
So just imagine an athletic program putting out. I was looking through like the conversation, and I think he said it was older, so like that's why he couldn't find it. I think he said it was from like the mid 2000s, so that's why you couldn't find it. But just imagine being able to look and be like, oh, the only reason this is crowded is because it's actually not
it's actually a high
game.
School
It's
game.
actually that speaks very much to Texas. That's Texas in a nutshell. That the stadiums can be more packed for a high school game than it would be for a college game on your own campus.
Absolutely, and I imagine whoever sent out the genius that's behind all their happenings on social media sent that out. I can't imagine that they thought it was going to go this way. But in my head, as someone who used to do social media for a living, the thought goes through my head, how did you not see it playing out this way?
Yeah, and even Pat Netherton, he said the same thing. He was like, how do you not see this going as badly as possible, especially because you're basically the villain of the conference. So it's like when people have if people have a chance to dunk on you, they're gonna take the chance, and of course, you literally just teed it up for them. So that's the part where I just look and laugh that it's like, people could have. I really was gonna leave it, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna put something kind of nothing crazy, and then everybody else came in rushing behind me. And was like, nah, I'm coming in. I'm like just gonna go Vince Carter over.
It's like The Godfather. They just keep pulling me back in. It's like Gags in the tent.
and cat fans with the water. He's definitely not. He's gonna let me know about that.
But yeah, and like you mentioned, I think the reason why there is such a strong reaction, obviously the audacity of the tweet a little bit, but it also goes back to just the way they handled the whole basketball situation. Whenever you literally had arguably probably one of the worst academic, what you would probably call, I guess, scandals / punishments in the history of the conference. You respond the next day by sending out all your #StillCounts tweets. And it's like, you know what, maybe sit this one out for a few days, maybe retweet your apology or statement from the AD. But no, SFA men's basketball #StillCounts.
Yeah,
Unlike the rings in their Twitter header.
So that was something. And then the other thing, remember that happened kind of late, which was totally out of left field, was when SFA head coach, the football coach, Kobe Carthel, he responded because, like you said, Denise said, they put out the emojis about Cowboy Stadium. And then Carthel tweeted, we'll see who gets in the postseason this year. Now, he's joking because neither SFA nor McNeese can get into the postseason because of APR scores. But at first, like on the surface, that's even more audacious because it's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, you are the head coach. Now, he's joking, and he admitted he was joking because of McNeese, a former McNeese football player responded and was like, yo, what's up? And he's like, I'm joking, blah, blah, blah. But still, like, you're the head coach. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it was kind of like last year during battle. It was kind of like last year during Battle of the Piney Woods. Like, I love Carthel, and I love the excitement that he brings to the conference. And I love the fact that he has generated interest in that program for the first time, and as long as I can remember. I grew up here in Houston area, and I've never seen this excitement about SFA, but it's like, maybe the head coach of the football team shouldn't be sending out those tweets. Maybe they shouldn't be retweeting the Sam Houston Sucks Ass account during Battle of the Piney Woods League. Maybe, sometimes you just need to put the keyboard or the phone down. Just shut down the Twitter machine for a few minutes.
Well, yeah. And I think that's part of what makes Carthel. Like, that's what makes him him. And you mentioned it, that excitement. Yeah, and I totally get that. And I'd almost rather have a coach that's fun and young and exciting and than the opposite. But like, I just don't understand. And I think I sent this to the group text. Like, my response was like, why all of a sudden? What has SFA done that all of a sudden they are like the cocky team of the Southland? I just don't like that. I think they just need to check themselves a little bit. But like I said, Carthel's awesome. I mean, he's obviously done some good things from there at SFA.
Yeah, I think you'd have to say he's easily one of the most interesting personalities in the conference, and I think he's good for it. We talk about, something I see every single year whenever I go down to Houston is I see a Battle of the Piney Woods game that SFA fans, attendance-wise, appear completely uninterested in, and he's changed that a little bit. Like, he has it where SFA fans are excited, which is something I couldn't say whenever I first got here, and they were a big mess as far as the football program is concerned.
Yeah, when it comes to SFA, he's definitely built it. Like, obviously, you saw they were competitive against Sam last year on the field. They were competitive with McNeese. The game, I think, was tied for three-quarters, and then McNeese kind of just, So obviously, they're going in a positive direction as far as their program is concerned. And he's definitely one of the more interesting coaches. I remember being at media day last year, and he stole the show. Like, he definitely stole the show. And it's a stark contrast to McNeese's prior head coach, Sterling Gilbert, who was very just vanilla. But, that's not anything controversial. Just a vanilla person. So but like you said, he needs somebody to
just put the Twitter machine down sometimes.
Yeah, there's a. I'm not gonna say too much, but there's people that should normally be in charge of those type of things, But I'll I won't get too deep into that one. But there's people that's usually in charge of those things for an athletic department.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that in the way things unfolded yesterday. But let's dive right into it. I think the thing that got us going, it was like, let's get together and do another one of these episodes, is SFA gave us the gift of having the thought of Southland Stadium Power Rankings, and it's something that Power Rankings is the easy go-to thing for whenever there is no sports content. I feel like we might have even done it once or twice in the few episodes we've done so far. But yeah, let's start it off. I feel like we were texting a little bit about it yesterday, and we all have kind of the same team. So we'll just kind of start from the top. I'll also say, us being, we've all covered the league for various different lengths. So I reached out to Patrick Netherton earlier today. I mentioned him earlier, probably the most long-time Southland Conference media member, officially works for Northwestern State, but has his own radio show, Radio Voice of the Demons, and just been around the conference for a really long time. And, I asked him, and he said, a lot of the same thoughts we did. He has McNeese at number one, or he has McNeese and Abilene kind of 1 and 1A. He has Lamar after that. And then it kind of everyone else is kind of battling for 4th place. And then you have HBU down there kind of in 13th. Love that backdrop of Houston, but everything else just kind of puts them at the very bottom of the list. So let's kind of start from the top, get our thoughts. McNeese for me, number 1. I know for you, you have the same thing too, David. But Matt, you had a different choice. Why don't you tell us who your number 1 pick is?
Yeah, I had ACU, which I would probably have McNeese 1A or 1B, however you want to say it. But it's pretty much a brand new stadium there in Abilene, if I'm not mistaken. I think they kind of have a little bit of everything. I think some of the stadiums, they have really nice stands, but there's press box, or the scoreboard's bad, or something like that. But I think ACU is pretty much, if you're going to grade every single their facility, either an A or a B as far as Southland Conference schools go in every single part of it. And I'm not sure you could say that about anybody else. And like I said, maybe McNeese you could say that about. But I think, and David, you brought up the good point that, is it about tradition and atmosphere, or are we just judging facilities? I think that if you're bringing in that game day atmosphere,
You there, Matt?
I just like ACU overall. I like the field surface. I like the stands go all the way to the end zones on both sides. That's another thing. You got both sides. A lot of the stadiums in the Southland Conference don't necessarily have that level of, the stands aren't that great on either side. But ACU has that. They got the press box. They got the surface. They got the scoreboard. Maybe that atmosphere is lacking just a little bit, and that comes with your team being better or worse. But
And even that atmosphere, they were up there as far as some of the top attendance-wise teams in the conference last year.
Sure. So I mean, even that's a great point. So I got ACU at that top spot just barely.
Yeah, and I think me and David both agree that we have Abilene Christian right up there, and I think just in spirit of the wording of the tweet with the word iconic, I think that's the reason why I have to go with McNeese at number 1. Is whenever you think about Southland Conference football, there's no question that there's one stadium. Like if you're going to pick one stadium, one game day environment, one kind of everything comes together. Like even though it's not the newest stadium in the world, it has just those bones and just has that tradition. And it's just one of those things where it's a special environment that you don't really see anywhere else in the Southland Conference. I mean, a great example is, this past year, it was my first trip going down to McNeese. And, I was talking to head coach Casey Keeler at Sam Houston State about the stadium. And he talks about, that was one of the things he was most excited about whenever he came to Sam Houston State, being a guy that came here, played and coached at Delaware, some of the best FCS stadiums in the country, but just hearing the praise he had and just the excitement, whenever he talked about playing down at the Hole, I think that speaks volumes to what I guess, you could say is the one thing stadium wise that Southland can make a statement with on a national level.
Yeah. I agree. And the thing about it is, it's not just like, obviously McNeese fans think that, it's a great stadium, but the thing that pushes it over for me is what the opposing teams think of the stadium. A lot of the opposing coaches and players, if you ask, hey, I'd like to, where would you like to go? A lot of them say, hey, I want to go to play down in McNeese. I want to play at Cowboy Stadium. I want to play in the hole. I've heard a lot about it. So that's the biggest thing to me. The stadium itself, it's good. It's a good stadium. There are some things that I think need to be upgraded. The scoreboard definitely is one of them. I think eventually, the thing that's tough, the attendance. They have such a high standard for attendance that even if they're down at 9,000, that's considered kind of low for them, and that's still pretty high in the conference. So I would say.
And I believe they were in like over 10,000 last year, right around it, if I'm not mistaken. That's on a down year.
Yeah. Yes. To be fair, they
there
definitely
was that
got
one
help.
game.
That Southern game went over 20,000, and to be fair, also that was a lot of Southern fans there. But yes, they definitely did have very good attendance. It'll be interesting to see what it's like this year with only one non-conference home game against Northern Colorado. Not the sexiest opponent. And then the home schedule. It's Southland, so it's decent. But it's just something about it. Walking through the parking lot and people cooking gumbo and the jambalaya, rice and beans, everything like that. It's just you see it. People usually watching LSU. There's a lot, man. It's just a lot, but there's definitely a reason why I think it's the best in the conference. And like we all say, Abilene, as far as aesthetics, is the best in the conference, but it just doesn't have enough seasoning yet. It's still pretty new. So, like I say, aesthetically up there, not probably. Aesthetically, it's one, but just everything else, I got to give it to Denise.
Yeah.
David,
sorry, what do you got, Matt?
No, sorry. My question is, I don't know if this is true or not, but is the feel down there that in Lake Charles that game day atmosphere has maybe diminished just a little bit in recent years?
Oh, for sure. It's definitely not what it was. I would say
At their heyday.
Early 2000s, late 90s, even in the mid 2000s. That's when McNeese was the power in the conference. They were the ones, they went to the at that time the Division I AA championship game in 2002. That's back when they were, everything was there. But and we're gonna get into it a little bit soon about the decline in attendance. But one, success of the team, they're good, not great. Some of it is also opponent. I mean, how much can you really get up? Psych yourself out if you're going to be playing a team like an Incarnate or like Houston Baptist. There's no animosity, there's no rivalry there compared to if you were going to play, maybe a Louisiana Lafayette or a Southern again, a Graham, teams like that. So there's things, but yeah, it's definitely not. I know that it's definitely not the same environment that it was. However long ago, maybe going on 2 decades now. But it says something that even with that drop off, it's to me still by far the best atmosphere in the conference, which is crazy considering, a place like Sam basically was the best team from the last decade. And, Josh, you can speak on it that
they couldn't even put 4,000 people in the stands for a top 10 game this last season.
Yeah. So that's the crazy thing. So yeah, I mean, McNeese definitely has dropped off from what it normally, and and that's not me saying that. That's fans that have been here are saying that as well. That's the numbers, everything. So, but it's still the best atmosphere. So that contributes to the stadium and it being what it is.
Yeah, and one thing that I kind of mentioned or that I noticed about going to McNeese is that me graduating from LSU and having my Baton Rouge game days down near Tiger Stadium is obviously it's nothing like that big time college football field that you get in the SEC, but at McNeese you definitely get that feel at McNeese and also at Nichols. And I haven't personally made the trip to southeastern Louisiana, but I've heard that it can be similar there as well. You kind of see similar things at Northwestern State, but McNeese, more than anywhere in the conference, you kind of get that Saturday football in Louisiana feel to it, if you kind of know what I mean.
Yeah, you do. Like I know, like getting out of my car. Like I usually have a particular, my game day routine. Get out of my car, I'll go walk, walk it, go up to the press box, put my stuff down, and then like I'll go, usually on the field, or I'll go like just walk around the parking lot just to kind of get a feel of the atmosphere. And you definitely do get that feel because, it's people are just there. If the LSU game is on, people are watching that. If it, the cooking is going to be there no matter what.
Yeah.
People are going to be making the food. A lot of people are nice enough, though. They'll invite you over. If you probably won't invite me over very much right now, but they really just very welcoming atmosphere. It's not hostile. It's definitely not like I've just using a bigger school. I've heard a school like West Virginia, the fans can be very hostile when you go there. It's not hostile like that. It's very welcoming, but it's going to be a good atmosphere. So yeah, you definitely get that feel. And then once the game starts, if it's a game that that they care about, like I'll use a quick example of Southeastern Louisiana last year. Former head coach Nance Guidry was the defensive coordinator at Southeastern. And, that's a big game in and of itself. So, there were definitely some feelings there. So that definitely contributed to it. But, otherwise, yeah, I like McNeese, but I think we can all agree the top two is pretty consensus. It's McNeese and Abilene, or Abilene and McNeese, depending on which way you look at it.
Absolutely. And then, just kind of moving on from that, I think it's kind of also a 3A and 3B whenever you look at the two teams after that all of us kind of agree on. For me, I have Central Arkansas at number 3, and that's mostly based on a game day environment standpoint. But I know both of you guys might have a little bit of a different opinion. I have Lamar at 4 right behind him, and it's kind of the same situation. It's like, do you go with the combination of environment, tradition, etc., or do you go with that exciting either new look or new and improved stadium? So, I guess, Matt and David, who do y'all got at 3 and 4?
Who you want to go, Matt?
Sure, yeah. So I got ACU 1, McNeese 2, and then I got Lamar at 3, and Central at 4. Now, I've been to both of those stadiums. Obviously, Lamar is what the team that I cover, so I'm there all the time. I think the Central Stadium is an interesting case to me because I really, really, really like that game day atmosphere. I love the stripes. I think it's a cool stadium. It's a little bit unusual. It looks different than everybody else's, and I'm not just talking about the stripes on the field, which are pretty cool, but it just has almost a little bit of that old time tradition-y feel, if that makes sense, maybe a little bit like McNeese. And I think the game day atmosphere, I think they show up for those games too, at least, the one that I was at. It was an late October game against Lamar, and both teams battling for a potential playoff spot. This was in 2018. But the only problem with Central Stadium is the press box is just doo-doo, for lack of a better word. So I would have Central pretty high if it wasn't for no, I don't think they're either 1 or 2. I think I'd probably have them above Lamar, if not for the pretty terrible press box situation.
But now maybe it's been improved since I was last there, but Lamar itself is no
well, okay,
press
so
box.
And listen, I've seen a lot of hate about Lamar's press box, and I'm not sure I understand it, to be honest. I think that if we're hating on Lamar's press box, then like, what are some of these other press boxes? What are we saying about some of these other press boxes towards the lower end of the Southland? I think Lamar is I think it's a top 5 press box in the Southland. Is that do you guys think that's too high?
I got Northwest.
No,
I don't know. It sounds about right. It's kind of like these stadium rankings. We got our 1 through 4, and then it's like, where do we go after there? Because they're definitely not in my top tier, but they're definitely not in my bottom tier. So I guess they're kind of right in the middle.
yeah. So when it comes to the like you said, it's a whole different, like, if you're doing like press box power rankings, that's actually very different than the stadium. Like stadium power rankings, I agree. Like I have Lamar at a Central, despite the background for Lamar being the refineries. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing to look at, but no, I do like how Manise's actual stadium is set up. It has that connection with the Montaigne Center, the basketball arena. It's cool. I like it.
Aesthetically, I think they're my number 2. Maybe is just from like a pure nice facilities / look of it. I think Lamar makes a good case as number 2. I think it's just building that fan base and that environment that kind of has them further down my list.
Yeah, and then obviously you have to remember they've only been playing football again for the last decade. I mean, they were off, didn't have a program for 2 decades, so it's pretty tough, to rebuild a program like that. Central Arkansas, they're what helps their stadium is how beautiful their campus is. Their campus is
100%.
gorgeous. Like that's another obvious, like, we don't even have to get into it. If you did campus power rankings, Central Arkansas to me would be number 1. Like it's honestly the nicest campus. But the actual stadium itself, it's nice. The stripes are polarizing. You either really love them or you hate them. Like I like them.
Patrick Netherton, sorry to cut you off, but whenever I talked to Patrick Netherton earlier, he loves the environment, loves everything else about Central Arkansas Stadium. He said he'd put him at 2, 3. He might even consider putting him at number 1, but the stripes themselves kick the Bears off the list for him.
I love the stripes, but I like weird stuff like that. I'm not, I really.
And my boss, the editor at the Huntsville Item, he's an Arkansas guy, and he's also a big time hater of the stripes. So like you guys mentioned, it is a polarizing topic. I like him myself, and that's why I have him at 3.
So, but when you talk about the press boxes, that is a totally different ball game. Like I actually do have Lamar's press box. Again, I think I put it at 4 because here's the thing: somebody on Twitter, guy he does like sports stuff in Southeast Texas. Mike Sanchez, Matt.
Yeah.
He said that might be in the worst of the conference, and I'm telling you personally, I have been to. Seen in person 11 stadiums in the conference, and I've been inside 9 of them. The only 2 I haven't been are Houston Baptist, the iconic, and Sam Houston State. But everywhere else, I can say Lamar's is better than Incarnate Word's by far. Incarnate Word it's down there. Like if you've been there, it's like there's no space. I'm trying to think of the other one. Northwestern States was okay. It was just it was cold, like really cold in there, so that didn't help.
They had good Cajun food when I went. Jambalaya, the whole.
That is true.
So I feel like for me, maybe I'm a little biased, but I almost automatically put, as far as press box rankings go, I almost always am biased towards the Louisiana schools. Maybe not so much Nichols because I think they had pizza and I went out to the tailgate to go get some good food. But then Sam Houston State also does a good job of bringing in some barbecue and some stuff like that. But I think the Louisiana schools definitely have that edge in the press box / food department.
I can see that. But yeah, like Central Arkansas, like Matt said, their press box is absolutely, for such a nice stadium, it's like their press box is like this big. It makes no sense. Southeastern Louisiana's, I heard that they basically cut off half of their press box in order to add more suites. So theirs is kind of tiny as well. So you've got them not great. Nichols not good either, because the problem with the Nichols press box is you get cut from like depending, like if they're going towards the scoreboard, you can't see, depending on where you sit in the press box, from like the 25-yard line going in. So you're sitting there, you have to, me and my niece SID had to like get up and, you know, kind of twist our head to see where the ball is at. So there's a lot there. Like Lamar is really, the biggest complaint people have about Lamar is the fact that it's cold and the food is whatever. And it's true. The food is like some deli sandwiches, whatever. But I mean, you know, could be worse. Could be no food. And then the fact that it's cold is like, all right, well, just bring a hoodie or something. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like, I definitely would not have. I totally disagree with all the hate on Lamar's press box. Like, it's not incredible. The best one is SFA's. Like, it's nice. It is huge. Like, there's a lot of space and you can see everything. So, like, you know, that's what I'm saying. You can't judge the stadium and press box in the same thing, because it's like SFA Stadium is not iconic, but I guess the press box is. I don't know.
Most iconic.
Yes,
press box.
I mean, the Southeastern, you mentioned it, David. They've got that. The press box is beautiful, but like they jam all the press people into like 2x4 room. Like, it's like, what? I don't understand that part of it. But getting back to Lamar, I think I agree. I think their whole setup is nice with the Montaigne right there, and especially with the addition when they put in the scoreboard with the Dauphin Athletic Complex on the other side, opposite of the Montaigne Center, the basketball arena. I think they've got both sides have pretty nice stands. Obviously, you have the stadium seating on one side, which people are going to pay a little bit more money for on the home side. The problem is with Lamar, I mean, and you mentioned it again, David, their atmosphere has been very, very down. They had the one good year in 2018. Even then, they weren't filling that side. I mean, not even close on the away side. You look at pictures of that stadium when the first year that they came back in 2010, 2011, some of those first couple years, that stadium is packed, and you're like, man, that is a good place to play an FCS football game. And you look at it now, and maybe not so much. Now that comes with winning and all that kind of stuff. But I think the facilities at Lamar, despite the background that you got to look at, with the refinery right there, I think they're right up there with anybody. And if not for Central having the press box issue, which is a very completely different issue, I like the stripes. We were talking about the stripes being polarizing. I really like them, and I like their whole stadium in general. I really do, but can't crack the top two for me.
So would we say a consensus for our top four from a combination between us three and then Patrick, leaving them off the list because of the stripes? Would it be safe to say that Lamar is 3 and Central Arkansas is 4 in these rankings?
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, that's good to me.
And I will say this: another thing that puts Southeastern Louisiana up there, kind of in the top of the next tier. To me, there's 3 tiers in the conference. We just mentioned the top tier, and then there's like this second tier of about 5 teams, and then the bottom is Incarnate Word, and then Houston Baptist. But Southeastern Louisiana has the best parking setup I've ever seen. Not just for, like, that might be the best parking setup. Like, if you're media, that might be the best parking setup in the country. It is perfect. You literally you park and you walk straight in, and you can go, like, you're right there. Like that to me puts them up there like at 5, because the stadium's, it's good, press box, but that, like, it's such a unique, like, parking setup. Like, you basically just put a parking garage right, like, you attached it to the stadium, and it's just so convenient. You don't have to walk too far after the game if you're on a deadline and you leave the stadium late or something. Like I love it. I love that one. I got into a huge fight with Southeastern fans a long time ago. That's the one thing I'll give them. I like that stadium and I like that setup.
Yeah, I haven't been to Southeastern Louisiana yet, but I think, like we mentioned, there's a solid top four, and then everyone else is kind of vying for that number 5 spot. And for me, I was thinking Southeastern Louisiana, and the reason why I was thinking that was because of that regular season finale environment that we had basically for the Southland Conference title, where Southeastern lost the game, but it was a packed arena, up there in Hammond. But the team they were playing, Nichols, seemed like they also filled about half the stadium, and they're my pick for number 5, even though the stadium itself, obviously they have some improvements on the way, but as of right now, the stadium itself is very substandard. I think the environment and the passion that you get from the fan base there makes it creep its way into the final spot in my top 5. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm gonna put it there. There's
you got
a
Nichols
couple.
at 5 too?
Oh no!
Yeah.
No. So, sorry. I have Southeastern.
Got you.
Because, like I said, the combination of the stadium, it's not the hugest. I think capacity is like 7,400. So it's not the hugest stadium, but it's a nice one, and I think it's like there's some woods surrounding it, so it's nice. Like I said, the parking thing is a big thing to me, but also what I imagine the press box was prior to them adding the suites would have definitely put them further up. But no, I definitely like the Southeastern. Nichols, we already know the issues.
Tent situation, facility situations aside, just purely stadium.
Even the stadium. I remember going there and just
it's kind of a dumpy stadium, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah, so like
the environment makes up for it, but it is. And the more you kind of talk to me about it, because you've been to Southeastern Louisiana, whereas I've only witnessed that environment on TV, and they were my 6 if I were to have another team. So I'm definitely on board with you with Southeastern as a number 5, I think. At least a 5A.
The closest, the one that if I had to put 6, because like I said, once you get into this area, they're all like
the same, really.
From a looks perspective, Northwestern State,
I like them.
It's not bad. The problem with it is it looks dated. Like when you walk into this, it looks and feels very outdated. So it looks like it needs to like get a freshening.
And that's the thing about them is they used to be electric too. Like kind of like how we talk about how McNeese is kind of, you've seen that attendance and just that intensity in the stadium kind of taper off these past few years as the program, hasn't been as successful as they were in the past. And I think it's been over a decade since Northwestern State's had a winning season. But back when they were a contender in the conference, that place used to be an electric atmosphere on Saturday nights.
And one specific thing so it wasn't a great night. I remember when I went to Turpin Stadium, Northwestern snapped like a 14-game losing streak against McNeese, and that really wasn't the issue for me. The problem was they lost in overtime. So of course I can't take the elevator because the coaches are taking the elevator, so I have to go out the stairs. And the problem with it is it's a very steep stadium, so like you take the stairs and it looks like you're looking down on the field. I'm not a big fan of heights, so that wasn't really something that I liked. So that and on top of that, they didn't have handrails going the entire way up the steps, so like I have to walk down these stairs feeling like I'm walking straight down with no handrail, and I would have definitely used the handrail. So that was one thing, just one of the things, the features in the stadium I didn't like. But I mean, as far as looks go, it's definitely up there. But I'd probably put that as like my honorable mention, like 6 or so.
I got you. Who you got in that final spot, Matt?
Yeah, so it pretty much came down to me with three schools: Southeastern, Northwestern State, and Sam. Um, I, I have not. What's that?
Now, say we haven't really heard Sam's name much.
No, haven't heard Sam, and I don't think it's necessarily a knock on them. Like I don't think Sam's stadium is trash, but I haven't been to Northwestern State, but I mean I've researched it a little bit, and I can't. You can never really be too sure until you go there, right? I mean you can't get that feel by looking at the pictures or whatever. But I gave it to Southeastern, that 5 spot. I think it almost reminded me when I was there. It almost reminded me of Lamar a little bit. I don't know how you guys think about that comparison, but I think Josh, you said they're doing Josh.
Yeah. You hear me all right?
Yeah, sorry. I said you're doing some Southeastern's doing some renovations to that stadium. You said.
No, I was saying
No, Nichols.
Nichols. Okay. But no, I think Southeastern. You almost have to give it to them. I kind of want to say by default. I mean, Sam's the press box for me is a little great. Right. The press box to me is fine. I like the food at Sam. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
but
they had barbecue whenever you're up there.
Yeah. I was impressed with that food at Sam. I gotta tell you, but and the stadium itself is not that bad. I mean, you could speak more to that, but I don't think that like it's a slight on Sam or anything that they're maybe like 6 or 7 or wherever you want to put them. I think they've got some nice stadiums ahead of them in the Southland Conference. But yeah, I would give it to Southeastern, not necessarily because anything that Southeastern did with that stadium, but just almost by default a little bit.
They're kind of just sneaking in by default into that 5th spot. It's like we've got 4 and then we've got 5, 6, 7 kind of all bunched up there together.
Josh, I just want you. Can you speak, Josh? Can you speak on this for me?
Yeah, what's up?
I think Sam Houston State Stadium and SFA Stadium favor each other a lot. Like they both kind of are.
They're very similar, yeah. And Patrick said that to me because I reached out to Patrick because he's been around the league forever, and I kind of wanted to get his thoughts on things. And obviously, I've never been to a football game at SFA Stadium because I'm always down at the Battle of Piney Woods at NRG in Houston, which is an absolutely electric just experience. Even though attendance has kind of dwindled a little bit, I think this past year or so. It's the one game of the year. Obviously, I haven't been here for a Sam Houston State playoff run, but it's that one game of the year where you have kind of a big game feel to it. But yeah, like I was saying, Patrick said Sam and SFA are basically identical. Whenever it comes to stadium, whenever it comes to fans, kind of no disrespect to anyone out there. I know I cover the team, but being a little bit fair weather, whether it's, you're coming off a triple overtime loss to Lamar and just over 3,000 of you show up to see them shut out the number 9 team in the country the next week. Or, whether it's just SFA fans that have been – it's been up and down because it's been an up and down program. So you kind of have these two teams where there's a lot of potential there. And for whatever reason, it's just never reaches, I think, its full realization. I think SFA has done a little bit better attendance-wise recently than Sam. And we can kind of get into this here in a second. But I think one thing that hurts Sam a lot is you're so close to Houston, you're so close to Texas A&M. Like you can go watch a Texas A&M game, you can go watch a Texas game, you can go get up to Dallas and Houston and be there in 2.5 hours. And I guess I'll use this since we got Southeastern locked in as our number 5 to round out the power rankings. A reason why we've seen, I think it's about a 5% drop off in attendance, in the Southland Conference last season. I think it has a little bit to do with it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good because you're getting your brand and your exposure out there. but I think you're seeing a drop off in attendance because it's so much easier for fans to log into their computer or pull up the ESPN app and just watch a game on ESPN Plus on your way to go watch an Aggie or Longhorn game, on your way to go hang out in Houston or Dallas for a day. And it's just so much easier than sitting in a 95-degree weather for, 4 hours.
I agree. Before we get too deep into that, I do want to say maybe that's why SFA fans and Sam Houston State fans dislike each other so much, is because they're so similar. I don't know.
Maybe that's what it is.
But no, you're right. When it comes to attendance declining, you have the problem. So look at the states that the Southland Conference are in. You've got Texas, you've got Louisiana, you've got Arkansas. All three states have at least one flagship team. Texas obviously has two flagship teams, and you've got, other big teams. So your attention is always somewhere else. It can be, right? In Louisiana, obviously everybody knows. You're going LSU. Every single Southland Conference program has the same issue of everybody's more concerned about LSU. And then last year was even more so because of how successful LSU was. So everybody's like, would I rather go look at a McNeese team that was, okay, decent, or would I rather go, or like Northwestern State, struggling? Would I rather watch them, or would I rather go watch LSU put 40 on Alabama? Even Nichols, even Southeastern, they both went to the playoffs. But I'm sure if you gave some of those half LSU, half Nichols fans the choice, they're gonna go watch the LSU game. Wait, I can go watch LSU put 70 on, whoever. Oh, absolutely. So that's part of it. Like you mentioned, the TV, definitely a big deal, because it's just more convenient. Like I can, I can watch if I want to watch McNeese, I can just stay at home. I can go grab a couple of pizzas. I can get some beers and just watch at home. And I can watch other games, or I can go be in the baking sun, and there's not, depending on what side of Cowboy Stadium you're on, there's not much cover, or any cover. So yeah, man, there's definitely some reasons why it's not. It may not, and I mean, obviously, it's going to be worse this year, not because of TV, but just because coronavirus is very unlikely to, even if fans are allowed in the stadium, they're not going to let full capacity come in, so it's going to be a lot, man. It's going to be tough. And obviously the attendance numbers this year are going to be pretty ugly, but yeah, man, there's so many reasons that, things are the way they are right now.
Yeah. And I'm, the Southland Conference football specifically especially recently, loves to preach this, like, like all this parity, anybody can beat anybody, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure that that's good for attendance necessarily, especially with the traditional powers maybe not being so powerful in the last couple of years. I think you're probably losing the attendance that you maybe lose from those traditional powers is probably more than you would gain from, say, a Lamar being a little bit better, or
Incarnate Word.
I don't know,
Incarnate
Word
their season a year or so ago.
Yeah, I don't think those necessarily move the needle. I would almost guarantee you that the Southland Conference would say, if they had their choice, they would say, screw all this parity, give us the traditional powers going head to head and top 10 teams with a matchup like that.
Yeah.
We don't care if Lamar or Incarnate Word or Northwestern State, or even Southeastern, who was, had a chance at the conference. I mean, like, I'm not sure that all this parity that the Southland Conference supposedly loves so much and all these coaches want to brag about is something that's great for attendance or great for the conference in general. I don't know how much you guys think that's affected anything as far as that goes.
I hadn't really thought about it much, but I do think it's a really good point because, you look at other conferences and, for instance, like the CAA, you have your James Madison, who is the team to beat, the team that's, not just the best in your conference, but one of the best in the country, undisputed, a top 5 team in the FCS that everyone is gunning for. And then so you get that kind of animosity, or you go over to other conferences and you got, North Dakota State and South Dakota State battling it out, for a top 5 game that matters. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. And it's like we've discussed before, it's kind of like the reason why we don't really think that the Southland will get 4 teams in the playoffs. It's because they just beat each other up too damn much. And there's not really that one team that's able to emerge. And it's kind of like, we saw it with Sam Houston State, I think was a perfect example last season. They're sitting there up 2 touchdowns at halftime on the road at Central Arkansas. They win that game. Not only did they essentially clinch a playoff berth, but they're starting to move back towards the top 10. They're starting to get, maybe that attention that we hadn't really seen in a little bit. And then all of a sudden, Central Arkansas just comes out of the gates blazing in the second half. Braylon Smith leads an amazing comeback. And then so all of a sudden what could have been there just kind of just slowly, rolls down to the bottom of the hill as far as that momentum. And you saw the same thing with Nichols come into Sam Houston State, number 9 team in the country, chance to beat a team that literally didn't have a healthy quarterback on its roster. And then they get beat 17-0. And so it's like this parity that we talk about and is good for the conference in a lot of ways, I do think maybe hurts them a little bit, like you mentioned, with those traditional powers and not really having that team where the nation looks at the Southland Conference. They don't say, you got to beat James Madison, you got to beat North Dakota State. There just isn't really that team in the conference right now. And I don't think it's necessarily anything against any of those teams. It's just because everyone's playing, or not everyone, but a lot of teams are playing at such an equally fairly high level.
Mm-hmm. Something that I wanted to also, like, when it comes to the attendance, look at, there's two different categories of big attendance in the FCS, right? You've got your HBCU big attendance, which, listen, they're going to show up and show out regardless. Like the SWAC and, like, them games are going to be massive regardless. Like they're going to show up. That's why teams want to schedule them, because they know fans are going to show up. Then you've got other places like I'm going to use the Big Sky as an example. There's not a ton of big cities in the Big Sky. You're talking, like I think the biggest city, like I think there's San Luis Obispo, and then you've got Sacramento State, and then UC Davis is just outside of Sacramento. But think about like Montana, University of Montana, Montana State. They get huge. Montana's probably one of the best atmospheres in all of FCS. What is there there's not as much to do, just on a regular basis on Saturday outside of that, right? And that's not to disparage. Like, I don't want to, if any Montana fan sees this, I'm just saying in comparison to, a Houston Baptist and Incarnate Word or something like that. A North Dakota State, same thing. Where would you rather be? Would you rather be, at home, or, hey, I can go into the Fargo Dome and, cheer my head off and see one of the best teams in all of college football play, right? There's so many, like, you have to take the small college town thing into consideration. And some of it's
Southland,
just pride.
Yeah. I was going to say, you kind of made me thought, in the Southland, probably more than any conference in the FCS, has to fight an uphill battle whenever it comes to just capturing the attention of that geographic region. I don't think there's anywhere else remote that's even really remotely close when you think about just the FBS teams and the Power 5 teams, and that are not just at that level but are competing for national titles and conference titles and things like that. I think you kind of hit it right there. Like Montana State, you're not fighting with much. North Dakota State, like, even in that region, I know a lot of people from up there that choose to be North Dakota State fans over Minnesota fans. Minnesota's a Power 5 team, but they don't have that traditional success like UT has, like maybe not huge success, but Arkansas has dominated that state and will always dominate that state. LSU ranked, coming off a national champion. So I think the Southland, more than any FCS league in the country, kind of has to fight an uphill battle that's very unique to them.
Yeah, I would say them, and probably I want to say it's the Ohio Valley. I think it's the one that has like the teams all across Tennessee and Kentucky. Like obviously you're dealing with Kentucky, Louisville and University of Tennessee and everything. But yeah, think about it. Like even, you're saying Arkansas, definitely not a successful football program lately. But, obviously, Sheldon, he works up there at Arkansas now. And he's like, it doesn't matter how good they are. Like UCA will never be able to. UCA could go out there, go undefeated, win the national championship this year. They'll never be as big as University of Arkansas, and that's just how it is. So when it comes to McNeese, when it comes to Nichols, when it comes to Southeastern, you got to go up against LSU, and then obviously Texas is just tough because it's just. Texas has been
Sam's less than an hour drive away from Kyle Field. Like
exactly, and even if Texas A&M, it's an above average program. It's not like they think very highly of themselves, but it's not the it's a good program, and but hey, like you said, if there's a chance to go to Kyle Fields, see a game in front of 100,000 people. Or, I can go watch St. Houston State play Abilene Christian in just a whatever game. Which one, a lot of people, not saying everybody, but a lot of people are going to choose Kyle Fields. So, like you said, it's an uphill battle for all of those teams.
I guess we'll end it on a positive note after that bit of a downer for a little bit for the conference. Let's tie this thing up. We started off with our Southland Power Rankings, and not necessarily us, but just kind of talking about how the Twitter world basically combined the Scottie Pippen and T-Mac on Sean Bradley gifs to SFA yesterday on social media. But I'm going to start out. We're going to give some love to some stadiums and other schools. My two favorites that come to mind for me, Stephen F. Austin for basketball. They absolutely, as far as, at the mid-major level, it's one of my favorite environments to be a part of. Maybe it's because I've only been there for Sam Houston State games. But even for, like volleyball games, they get that thing going like no one else in the conference. And then also honorable mentions on the basketball court. I think that 4 big games, Abilene Christian and Lamar show up and can make it a really fun environment. Probably my favorite environment I've ever been a part of since I covered this conference was actually a double overtime game at Abilene Christian whenever them and Sam were 1-2 a couple years, I guess it would be 2 seasons back now. And it was basically a game, double overtime, back and forth, and then Sam essentially clinched their regular season title with that win up there on the road. But, those are some programs, with arenas that I wanted to give love to. And then also on the baseball side, right here in my backyard in Huntsville, I think Don Sanders is as good as it gets at this level. Not only do you have, basically every single first pitch, you have that beautiful backdrop of the sun setting over the piney woods. But you actually get that big game feel. Like there are going to be several times a year, sometimes for Southland Conference games, but you're also going to have several times a year when you have Texas A&M, Baylor, or Rice, or University of Houston, and these teams come in there, and it's a standing room only environment for a Southland Conference baseball game, which I don't think you can say really anywhere else. You guys might be able to attest to that a little bit more, but I just kind of wanted to give a shout out to, I guess, a couple other arenas and stadiums and other sports before we close this thing out.
I will say I do like Lamar. I love the Montaigne Center. Might be not including atmosphere. The Montaigne Center might be probably one of the best. It's definitely, I think, my one thing about Montaigne is it might be a little too big. You might need to at the point that it was built, there it was like the Lamar basketball crowd used to be like massive, but I think it's probably too big by about 4,000 to 5,000 seats right now. It's not going to get that many people in there. Even listen, McNeese Lamar, the last game of the regular season was that was about as big of a game as it can get, and it was a good atmosphere. But I think they can. Yeah, I think the only thing about them is just kind of take it down a little. But you talk about your own backyard. I definitely have to give love to the HHP complex here. It's not brand new. It's 2 years old now, but the HHP complex here in the East. Some of the atmospheres I've seen here, you both came here for basketball games last season.
It's awesome. I love it.
It's great. The way they build it is that it's, again, it's steep, so the sound comes down onto the court. It's 4,200, so it's pretty intimate. The Nichols game that I covered, it went into overtime and at least won. That's probably the best atmosphere I've seen for a basketball game covering Southland Conference. I got to give them love. It's great. You're right. For baseball, Sam Houston State, I remember, we can't forget that infamous weekend, but that was a nice one, even though it was an afternoon. I would have liked to have been there for like a Friday night game, but
Rest in peace to the Jolly Fox, by the way. Speaking of your weekend in Huntsville. So we'll leave it at that.
But yeah, man, that is a nice stadium. I like how it, again, like you said, you got the woods behind the outfield. It's kind of, again, built into the ground. So I like that one. I really do.
And it's kind of an underrated. It's a little bit of an underrated Southland city, I feel like, too. I think we've discussed it before. You and Sheldon kind of came up, and it's one of those places where if you're in town for just a few days, there's a lot of really cool stuff, or just fun that you can get into here.
Matt?
Yeah, so I'll make a couple comments on the things you guys said. One, the Montaigne Center is definitely too big. When they built that, I want to say it seats 10 or 11,000. When they built that, Lamar was an absolute powerhouse, honestly, in basketball. I mean, Lamar is traditionally a basketball school, 100%. You look through the 80s and the NCAA tournaments that they made, and some of the players they had and some of the players they went up against. There was some good times for sure. But I think when the Montaigne Center for a big game, when it's Sam or I don't know, McNeese, it will get going, but you're never going to see people on the top level. I mean, it's always, about around 5,000. So I think you hit it right on the head, David. I think it's probably about 4,000 seats too many right now for their usual draw. I think something that you said, Josh, was that I totally agree with, and I've heard from multiple coaches, is basketball coaches hate going to ACU. I mean, not only is
I've heard that.
Yeah, not only is it a drive for almost everybody. So for Lamar, you got to drive 8 hours up there or whatever it is. But they show out, and they show out for girls or for women's games, too. I remember talking to former coach Robin Harmony at Lamar, and she said, I mean, the SFA games are tough. SFA is obviously usually the best team in the conference as far as women's basketball. But she told me she'd rather play at SFA than ACU any day because the fans show up for those women's games, and they're loud as all heck. I haven't been there for a men's game, but I could imagine it's pretty similar. So I totally agree that ACU has an underrated environment for basketball. And then, Sam, to me, is obviously the best baseball atmosphere, stadium, whatever you want to call it, in Southland. just speaking from my own personal experience, I don't really travel a whole lot for during the baseball season for a couple different reasons. Mostly because Lamar has not been very good at baseball in my time covering them, to put it lightly. But I think Lamar is doing what they can with their facility. They just put new turf in. It's very nice, the new turf that they just put in. They need to build around that. I don't know if you guys have been here for a baseball game, but the rest of that facility is not very good. The locker rooms are not very good. The stands are not very good. But they're doing what they can with that. But I think you guys, pretty much hit it on the head. McNeese is also a very good basketball stadium. I love the new complex that they have down there. It almost reminds me of like a newer version of the Montaigne, a little bit nicer, probably. David, what do you think?
Yeah, nicer, smaller. I can see that. I do.
Kind of maybe the
right.
perfect size for a Southland basketball arena.
Yeah, and a little more. They've got the natural light coming in there, which I like. The Montaigne always seems so dark to me. When you're in there.
You're right. But you're right. Sorry, you're 100% right about that.
No, that's really all I had though. And then
you mentioned,
and then what Josh?
What you got?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of McNeese's basketball arena, they probably one of the greatest moments of the basketball season was provided to us. Was it by Instagram and a Nichols player? Isn't that right, David? That was probably one of my favorite moments, and maybe you can just elaborate on the situation a little bit without going into too much details.
Yeah, well, this is the night before the McNeese played Nichols, the men's basketball game. Nichols got into town and went to practice at the arena. I'm sure that's pretty basic. Most teams do it if they get in town early. Well, Nichols players took it upon themselves to have a lot of fun. Recorded themselves. Jumped on top of the scores table. They put stuff on Instagram, said, walking your trap, take over your trap. And, I asked the players and the coach on the record after the game, McNeese's players. I asked them on the record. Of course, they played it very cool. Off the record, though, they definitely saw it and they wanted to prove a point. And I think I don't know if McNeese would have lost had they not done it, but it definitely added some spice to the game. And you could tell that the teams didn't like each other. And, hey, if you came into my house, my arena and did that, I can't say I like you very much either. But, yeah, it was definitely a brazen thing for you to do and for a coach to allow his players to do. But didn't pay off for him.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a this didn't age well moment for the Nichols basketball program.
No, not at all. But and then two quick ones, man. If you've never been to a McNeese softball game, like, don't laugh. The atmosphere is great. Like, they go hard. Like, that might be the first or second best fan base for a McNeese athletic program. And a weird, and you're gonna laugh, but Houston Baptist basketball, that place,
historic Sharp Gymnasium,
among other things. Yes.
You told me not to laugh, and I'm laughing. I'm sorry.
I know. It can hold maybe 1,000 people. That might be generous, but like, it's a weird. Like, the thing is, though, if it's a close game, it's so intimate. Like,
it has that like high school, like, as we've all done, it has that feel where you're covering a high school game, sitting on the first row of the bleachers, and it's a heated environment because you can hear all 1,000 people that are in the building.
Yes, I can literally reach out and touch the visiting head coach. Like there have been times where I had to stretch my leg and worry about like tripping the coach because he's like walking back and forth. So yeah, you definitely, it's a weird one. It's not, I wouldn't put it up at the top, but it's one of those that's like, once you do it, you'll never forget it.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we got for you guys today. I'm Josh Criswell, and they're David Barry from the American Press in Lake Charles, and Matt Fay from the Beaumont Enterprise. And obviously the big thing we did today was do our Southland Stadium Power Rankings for football. And going from the top, we had it's McNeese, Abilene Christian in number 2, Lamar in number 3, Central Arkansas at number 4, and then Southeastern Louisiana kind of sneaking in to that 5th spot. Agree with us, disagree with us. We'd love to hear from you. Hit me up at item_Criswell and hit them up at DBerry Sports and at Matt G. Fay. Thanks to everybody out there for listening and following along with us today.